question, which is
Actually, we'll call the January 20 or February board meeting to order. All residents, my absence. Approval of meeting minutes for January 27, 2025, and trustee planning session February 4th, 2025.
I make the motion to approve both of those minutes, the January 27th and February 4th.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Moving on to, so executive director's report.
Yep. Thank you so much. Just one item I wanted to cover before we get into the bulk of the agenda, which we've got a lot to cover today. Ron Pretty is going to be retiring after 21 years and 4 months with the district.
Yep.
So as of this Friday, this will be Ron's last day. This is Ron's last board meeting. So we certainly appreciate Ron's years of service to the district. Started as a paratransit operator, then moved to a supervisor, and then to into operations management. So certainly going to miss Ron and his contributions to the district, and wish him and his wife and his family the best in his retirement. So
Thank you. Thank you very much.
this Friday, award presentation, of course, it's recognition and cupcakes at least 1 o'clock is when we'll be doing it. So yeah, time stop on by. All right, with that, then we'll get into the agenda. E2 Finance, start off with Williams McCarthy, services rendered through January 31st, and AGHL, services rendered through January 31st of 2025. Are there any questions on those items? If none, then we have approval of accounts payable invoices. You will note in the invoices that we had one claims payment that was associated with that to travelers for a closed claim. If there's any other questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, then we have invoices for a total of $458,203.62.
I make a motion to approve the accounts payable invoice list.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Moving on then, item B is the 2025 annual pension valuation report presented by Brett Schwab with Schwab Actuarial Services. And so annually, Brett and his team conducts a review of our pension's performance to determine what is the requisite contribution that needs to be provided to fund that, and they make a recommendation, and the staff makes a recommendation to the board based on that. So Brett will walk us through the assessment that they did, and help you answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Mike. Vice Chairman, Secretary and Treasurer, everybody else in attendance. Appreciate the opportunity to join you again this year. My strain my vocal cords too much cheering at sporting events, so I'm not sick, so don't worry about that. But so if you can't hear me, or if there's any other questions on the material we go through, certainly just reach out and let me know so we're all on the same page. So I'm going to start. I'm going to update you with the kind of status of the plans and give you some background and some information to help you decide what the annual cash contribution should be this year. Now, since last February, what we've done is the pension benefits were updated as of 7/1/2024 for additional accruals, and we used those annual benefit statements, which Susan reviewed and checked and emailed out to participants. We also did the 6/30/2024 financial disclosure valuations, which Mike approved, and the auditors use them in your financial statements. So again, today we're going to start with a kind of summary of the valuations, and I can help you set a cash contribution for the year. Okay. So we're going to start with the accounting on stamped page 1. And for the pension plans, there's separate valuations done for accounting and also cash funding valuation. Now the GASB, or the Government Accounting Standards Board, kind of mandates some methods that are used for the valuation, but they're hands-off when it comes to what funding, the cash for the cash funding part of the valuation. So that's how we do kind of separate valuations. However, the accounting for this year, 6/30/2024, and the pension funding for the following year, so 7/1/2024 to 6/30/2025, really they're based really on the same date, you do the valuation, they use the same assets, and they also use the same participant data. But they have different statutory, different methods to use, that's why we do both of them. Now, there's also a retiree healthcare evaluation, for the retiree healthcare plan, which also is known as OPEB. So if I say OPEB, that's kind of the lingo for that. And only accounting is performed for that because there is cash set aside to fund the benefits. However, it's not legally attached, so you can basically use that for anything, but it's, you know, set aside for that, but there's no funding done for that valuation, okay? So if you want to turn to page 2, there's a kind of an overview here. Now, there's a more detailed summary in the appendix for reference. However, there's a table here on this page that shows the pension plan's funded status, and you can see that it increased from the prior year. So we ended up at 6/30/2024 at 90%, 90.5%. Now, the funded status, it's volatile over time, and it's primarily volatile driven by the investment returns. So, you know, in years that you have high, you know, you do have volatility, but in years when you have high investment returns or high contributions, the following year typically will see a higher funded percentage. Now, our long-term expected valuation percentage for long-term asset return is 6.5%, and we still feel that's reasonable and appropriate. That's kind of our best guess, okay? So we had, if you look at the table, we had 12.3% last year, which is a lot higher than our 6.5% return, and so our funded status reflects that, went up. Now, for the liabilities, for the benefits, we continually monitor the assumptions that we use, the demographic assumptions, especially, for example, mortality, retirement rates, mortality rates, withdrawal rates, salary scales, etc. And we monitor those to make sure the plans are properly valued. Now, each year, you can see that the liability increases typically, and that's really driven by the additional benefit accruals by active participants, and also reflecting that your active employees are a year older and closer to receiving the benefits. So it's discounted 1 year less, which raises the liability sum. Now, the current funded status, that 90.5, it's strong, very strong compared to other state and local pensions. As an example, across the US, the average is like 80%. As you probably all know, that's actually pulled down a bit by Illinois. Illinois is one of the worst in the nation. That's only like 50% funded. So, you know, the RMTD pension plans at 90.5 is very respectable, very good. Now looking forward to June 30, 2025, you know, we don't know the funding status now, obviously, it'll depend on the 2025 cash contributions that we'll discuss next, and also our investment returns on the current asset trust, which essentially is made up of prior year contributions accumulated with investment returns. Okay, now the OPEB, real quick, has or the retiree healthcare evaluation had not 2.78 million at 6/30/2024. Now remember, that's a frozen plan, and we only had 23 remaining participants in that. So that's getting smaller and smaller, you know, mortality impacts, so no longer. So really, for a while now, that liability will kind of battle between, we all know healthcare inflates every year, so it gets more expensive. But as people get older and older and older and pass away, it'll be a battle which one wins out. Okay. So let's move on to the pension funding on the next couple slides. So on page 3, stamp page 3, you see we have a similar 5-year snapshot on page 3. And consistent with the accounting or the GASB valuation, the accrued benefit funded percentage has also increased from the prior year due to the favorable returns. Now, in fact, a lot of the comments I made for the accounting pages are similar. It's really the same. The asset values and the returns are the same as we just looked at. The present value of benefits, they increase year to year, similar to the accounting. But they're a little bit lower because, again, there's different valuation methods and assumptions that are used, but the pattern's really the same. And really, it makes the funded percentage a bit higher on the funding valuation. But again, the story is the same. The funded status and the funded percentage are really driven by the contributions and the investment returns on them. So now RMT has historically considered the normal cost a minimum cash contribution. And the normal cost includes the additional benefits earned by active employees or active participants, And also it includes a piece of the unfunded past accruals. So it's already been accrued, not all of it's funded at 100%, so it's a piece of that as well. Now, historically, the annual normal costs have been between 1.04 million and 1.66 million over the last decade. And so the annual cash contribution that you've made has always been at least equal to the normal cost. Okay. And 2024-25 normal cost is a bit lower than what we expected last year, again, because we got pretty good returns, which lowered down the normal cost a little bit. So the recommended 2024-25 cash contribution is at least equal to the 1.1 million normal cost. Okay. Now, if you want to turn the page to page 4, now this shows kind of the pattern of the normal costs and the cash contributions, the returns and the fund percentage over the 5 years. Okay. Now the normal costs broadly reflect the prior year contribution amounts and the asset return levels on those contributions. And you can see, it's kind of hard to follow, there's a lot of numbers, but the normal cost is generally lower in years following high deposits into the trust or high returns. Okay, so the normal cost kind of reflects that pattern. Now, the last 2 columns there show the fund percentage both on a current service and a projected service basis. So the GASB column there, basically the accrued benefits today. That's your funded percentage there. And the PVFB, the present value of future benefits, it basically it incorporates all the future service that your current employees will render. Okay. Now the last line assumes a 1.1 million contribution. And if that's the amount that we decide upon, the expected 6/30/2025 percentages there on the right, under projected, are shown under a few return scenarios. And I've used the latest assets that I had was generated 2025, and they were, we've had good returns to that date. So that's why the percentages are a bit higher if we continue to earn the 6.5% assumed return. So we have the appendix. I have a lot of detail. I don't know if you want, I can certainly go through that. I don't know if you want me to go. I love numbers. I can go through those all day. But we can go through that, or we can decide on recommended contribution, whatever you decide.
Questions?
I was gonna see if you could share a little bit about the projection of the 6.5% and how we kind of land at that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, we were at 7% for many years, right? And then a couple years back, you can actually see, turn back to the page 4, you can see the assumed return in 2020 was 7%. And then we dropped down to 6.5% long-term expectation. And at that point, the market was, the economy wasn't like today. Today it's doing good, but we said, 7%, I think we're pushing a little bit and relying on monies that we may not get. Well, these last couple of years, the returns have been, pretty darn good. And so, I guess we can consider going back up to 7, because we're making money hand over fist. But in my mind, the market is priced so high now. It's almost like, well, a lot of that's already baked in, and so going forward, and that's what the assumption is supposed to project. Going forward, in my mind, I think that the high returns are already baked into the current prices. So how much more can they go up? And so if you look at other projection of returns by other by investment consultants and such, they're expecting that the future returns will come down a little bit from where they are now. So that's why we periodically do actually run it through our model and make sure that 6.5 is still appropriate, and that we did this year as well, and it is.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So Brett and his team said the minimum pension contribution 1.1 appropriate, as indicated in the memo from staff attached, based on our historical practice of funding at least the minimum, and then if we budgeted more than that to fund the budgeted number, we budgeted 1.75 for this fiscal year, and staff recommends going ahead and making the contribution at the budget level, above and beyond, just to stay ahead of the the curve on this. And so, that's staff's recommendation. And of course, as indicated in here, we make the first contribution immediately, following the meeting, first half of the contribution, and then make the second half of the contribution at the end of the fiscal year once we've received our last month of dope reimbursements from the state. So tell us what you would like.
Well, I don't have a question. I'm good with going with it.
Yeah, I agree. So I'll make the motion for the approval of the annual pension contribution for the 24-25 plan year at 1.75
I'll
million.
second. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And Brett, thanks as always. Appreciate your time.
I apologize for the voice.
So good. You did well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Nice to see you all.
All right, good. Thank you. All right, moving on, somewhat of a house cleaning item, item D then, adoption of local subsidy revenue reserve policy. At our last meeting, we had discussed with the board, and the board approved a general policy around the use of local revenue for deferred revenue in place of the opportunity to use some other revenues to as a local share. As we went back and looked at some other guidance from our accountants on that, we decided to provide some additional clarifying language and would like to make an addendum to that previous motion and policy that we had put in place as outlined in the memo. Really what it does is it talks more specifically about the mechanics around how that process would be look like a procedure for how that would be undertaken and some of the guardrails around how it would be done. More specifically, if we've got within the budget, for instance, this fiscal year, we've budgeted a certain amount. If we come in below that certain amount, we've allocated for a certain amount of local subsidy that we would use. We've also allocated a certain amount of federal subsidy we use. And if we come in higher on the federal subsidy than we do the local subsidy, we should just go ahead and use the federal subsidy as we've budgeted for to make the use that full amount as the local match and not as much of the local subsidy, and then leverage the local subsidy as a reserve in the meantime that can be used towards future operating expenses. But while we wait to use it, if we have some that we need to use, then it would be in an interest-bearing account that would earn revenue on the existing revenues, which then obviously we have that benefit. So the policy then that we've got outlined in the memo outlines that and how that would work relative to budgets approved by the board and how we would reallocate revenues to the board and then how they could be used in preceding years in place of those revenues. So it's all predicated on the availability of an alternative source of revenue in its place, right? So that's what the policy then is outlining. So if you're having questions, be happy to answer them. Otherwise, if we make a motion to that addendum policy is outlined here, that would be what we're asking.
Yeah, I would make the motion to adopt the local subsidy revenue reserve policy as outlined in the board packet.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Moving on then to E, the review of the fiscal year 2026 draft operations budget. So included in your packet is a memo that walks through the budget and the line items. I'll let Xavier cover that. I'll just note to the board that, coming as we discussed in the planning session, this is a aggressive budget compared to previous budget that includes service increases both in weekend span of service and some additional weekday daytime peak level frequency additions. So close to 8% increase in hours for the fixed route and over 8% for demand response, which then is the driver for the increase in the overall budget increase that we're seeing this year. Other side note that I'll mention, just we have an additional local subsidy increase from the city of Rockford of 321,000 is considered within this budget. Obviously, based on that dollar value, that helps us draw down additional dope revenues, and so just from the city of Rockford's contribution, it's approximately $1 million in additional service that we're able to add into the budget, so that's considered as part of this. The other item that I'll simply mention is that the rest of it is utilizing federal subsidies, and so while we're capped at the 65% that we can get from the state, and our local subsidy is increased just within the city of Rockford, really the bulk of that is relying on federal formula funds. Some of those funds are the last remaining funds of our CARES, CRIS, and ARPA allocation that we had originally, and so we'll spend all of that in 2026, and then the remaining deficit, if you will, the local share is going to be through the federal formula funds that we receive. So that's the bulk of it, and obviously that's an important part of how we're going to fund this. But with that, I will turn it over to Xavier, and she can walk through the particular line items of the budget and answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, so starting with our fixed route, our fixed route services includes a total of 120,000 for hours compared to last year, which is about a 7.9% increase over total budgeted hours. That we're gonna operate the same. This is on the assumption that we're gonna operate on the same service hours currently in place, but also include additional hours to increase the span of service on weekends, along with increasing service frequency on some of the weekday time routes. Fixed ridership is projected to be the same. Demand response service includes a total of 81,568 hours, which is an 8.7% increase over total hours from last budget. Currently, the annualized total for our ridership is projected to be about 29,690 more rides for this fiscal budget year. So we're projecting about a 10% in ridership increase from fiscal year 25 to next fiscal year budget, with the majority of the increase being associated with our paratransit ridership and lesser degree with state line mass transit ridership. When we look at salary and wages expenses, total number of employees that we're budgeting for fiscal year 24 is projected to increase to 184 employees. So that's 164 full-time, 20 part-time. And last year we were budgeting at 179 employees. Salary and wages are projected to increase 16.3% to about $11,662,000. The wage increases across the departments range from 3% to 3.25% in the budget. Our fringe benefits are increasing by 8.3%, and that's primarily a result of Medicare, FICA, and workers' comp increasing due to the increase in personnel. Services are increasing by 31.35% to over $2.6 million. This is primarily due to $370,000 increase in professional services for non-reoccurring expenses for the project management services with CCS related to the Mulberry Street expansion, as well as $223,000 increase in repair maintenance expenses to fixed route vehicles and a $26,000 increase to security service, as well as some additional increases for yearly maintenance support and hosting of different systems that we use. Materials and supplies are increasing 15%, primarily due to increase in fixed route and paratransit fuel expenses as a result of the projected increase in vehicle miles for the additional services. Utility expenses are slightly decreasing due to some tablet costs decreasing, but the electricity supply rate for the next budget is projected to be slightly higher than our current rate. Casualty and liability expenses are projected to increase 40%. This is about almost $480,000 increase in expenses due to our projected premiums and claims increases. Taxes and vehicle registrations are marginally increasing. Our purchase of transportation expense is decreasing slightly by 3% based on the Boone County of aging contract. Their passenger trip rate is now 31.88, but they are projecting a decrease in passenger trips for the next fiscal year. Miscellaneous expenses are decreasing slightly by 5.5%. Our debt services for our annual battery lease payment is remaining the same. So overall, our expense budget for fiscal year 26 is an increase of 14.5% compared to last year. When we look at revenue and subsidies, our fixed route revenues are projected to increase about 11.8%. Again, this is primarily based on looking at our current annualized fare box revenue increasing about 16.8% over our budget projections. Demand response, paratransit revenues are projected a slight increase of 2.6%. And again, this is primarily based on increase in ridership. Our subsidies from state, federal, local municipalities, and government sources are projected to increase 14.5%. The state and federal subsidies are projected to account for about 81.6% of the total, and the IDOT DOPE subsidy for eligible operating expenses is projected to increase about 15.2%. Local and municipality county subsidies are projected to account for 19.6%, and the SMTD subsidy is projected to account for 6.6% of the total. So revenue and subsidies budget for fiscal year 26 is projected to increase 14.2%. I can't talk. Too many numbers at one time. Sorry. 26 let me start over. Fiscal year 26 budget is projected to increase 14.2% compared to last year, with total revenues projected to be at about 1.7 and total subsidies projected at 28.7 million. And just a reminder that this is the proposed draft budget that will be on review for inspection to occur over the next 30 days. And the final budget will be presented to the board on March 31st for approval.
Any immediate?
I had some questions earlier today that Javier was able to clarify, so helpful to go through that, and also helpful to have this memo to just kind of have each section at a glance. So thank you for putting that together. Not to mention the whole budget is probably a lion's share of work. So yeah, thank you for that, for the summary as well. The thing that I think is just not really a question, it's just a note, is the exciting component of being able to add and extend services as part of this budget, which is, the reason for making it an increase in expenses, and also to still meet the balanced budget. So I think it's exciting to see an expansion of services as part of the budget.
I agree.
So if you have any questions in the meantime, it's always posted for you. Please reach out for anything else that comes up, but we plan on bringing that back then after the review period and the public hearing, and sending it to the board for approval. Has to be in, we're presenting on the 31st, and we'll turn around and submit it that day because it needs to be into IDOT by April 1st. So, yeah, quick turnaround. But thank you to all the staff, particularly the directors, Susan, Dan especially, and Xavier and all of her work in putting this together. It's an intense month and a half or so of time and effort, and getting it all done in time is it's a big effort. So thank you to staff.
Thank you.
And it's her first time.
Yes, especially that. A lot to unpack, that's for sure. So
Good job.
all right, thank you, everyone. So with that, then we will move on to the next item, which is item F, the pension portfolio review through February 18th, and pension investment statement for month ending January 31st of 2025. Any questions on those included in your packet for review? If none, fine. We will move on then to the next item, which is the E3 operations maintenance facilities report. Starting with the operations report, Dan's memo that was included. Dan, you want to walk us through that quickly?
Sure.
Or slowly, I don't
No, I'm always good for quickly. You see in the fixed route service, as you scroll through, January was a little bit down compared to January of last year. Not too much though. For the same period though, revenue was up 26%. The ridership was down, I think 1.4%. Overall ridership's up, as Xavier noted, a little over 2% for the year. As you scroll through, we've added this fixed route performance report, which has all the routes listed out, which I think will be very beneficial. It's a nice quick glance at what everything is doing. I will have the paratransit numbers for January and the March report. We did not quite get those finished up in time to get them in the report.
Kind of busy implementing a new software
Yeah.
system, so it's taking a little bit more time than we thought.
Yeah. So any questions on any of that?
No, it looked like, on the ridership, saw some increases in, night and senior ridership that I guess kind of surprised me, but also I saw the bike ridership was up in January too, which was probably due to the nicer temperatures. But I was also curious, do we have more buses now that have racks and?
Everything has racks.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I think, it's surprising how many bike rides we have even during the winter months. I mean, this tells you a lot of people are really dependent on that last mile or so to get to a bus stop that they're using it. So, I mean, even on cold, crappy days, we get a lot of bikes still. So, but yeah, everything's had racks for quite some time.
Yeah, I was, just happy to see that the spec numbers were either
Mhm.
where they were or increasing
Yeah.
over time.
All right, as far as, scroll down a little further, we got the maintenance report. And we did have, although January was generally pretty mild, we did have that one little streak of cold, so, you can see our roll call numbers are up just a little bit. A lot of the engine stuff is related to the 1300 series buses that we're hoping to get rid of here in the next year, so, those cause us some issues, and you can see the heat and AC, obviously not the AC, but the heat was, a high one this month as well, just did a little bit of cold days. You'll see the same thing next month as well, because we had obviously that week this month where it was below zero most of the time. Even when everything's working well, when it's, you open your door every 2 blocks, it's really hard to keep heat, so we get a lot of calls for to check heat, so. Any questions on the maintenance stuff? All right, facilities, outside of our normal maintenance work, we did have a couple snow episodes that, our guys had to spend some time on, so. And now with, this setup the way it is, there's a little more sidewalk for us to take care of, and it takes a little bit more time, so we did have, some activity there. Project report, facility expansion, I think they're gonna be digging tomorrow. With the break in the weather, the plumbers were out, this morning, taking some final measurements on the grading out there, so, we're hoping to, be digging tomorrow. If it doesn't rain, I think it's supposed to rain now, so we'll see what happens, but, they've assured us it should be this week sometime, so, we do have a OAC meeting tomorrow with them to go over, so we'll have a little more update, then, so. Other than that, it's just been the electricians are still here running conduit. And like I mentioned, the plumbers have started, they have their job boxes downstairs, so they're ready to go, so. Paratransit demand response software, as you know, we did go live February 1st. There's been some snags, which we anticipated, but the support's been good, with TripSpark. I literally just saw an email before I came in here that things have slowly improved, so, it's a matter of identifying what the issue is and, okay, is it operator error that somebody doesn't know how to put something in there, or is it a system-wide thing where we go through, so, we're sorting through things, and, once we get that sorted out, then we'll be looking to hopefully roll out the, passenger-facing stuff in April. That's the goal, so continued hope that, that gets better and better every day. And the telephone system replacement project, the bids are due back, Thursday or this week, sometime this week.
Thursday.
So, there was quite a few of them went out. We answered quite a few, around 30 questions for clarifications. A lot of them were duplicate, but, and then, we'll see what we get. Hopefully we get a few bids, but not too many, because we had to sit down and evaluate all of them, which is pretty time consuming, so. And then we'll get that awarded, a couple weeks after that.
Any other questions on those items?
It's a great report. It's a great report.
Good. We can move on to the next item then, under E3E. As we mentioned in the budget, summary, we were anticipating a increase in electrical, utility, costs, and this time of year is when we do our renewal, typically, and in the, memo that we provided, at the beginning of the board meeting, we outline, what the rates were that, we just received from our
What happened to mine?
Do you have your thing, Dan?
Yes, sorry,
Okay.
I couldn't find my memo. It's not in the packet, it was sent
It was
loose.
handed out, so
We just got the pricing this morning,
So we
so.
use an energy broker, Rockford Energy, to go out to market on pricing for the rates. And as you see, they came back, they ranged, I don't know how many, several vendors, that they solicit from on this, or providers they solicit from, ranged from 0.74 to 0.76 kilowatts per hour. AEP was the lowest provider. And they broke that their rates into two different segments, one being standard rates, and the other using renewables. And the renewables ranged from 0.076 to 0.08. AEP also was the lowest supplier with renewables at 0.076, whereas their standard is 0.074. So our current rate, for reference, is with Shell Energy now, it's 0.05986 kilowatt per hour. That's what we were paying in the past. We're paying through
The end of March.
to the end of March, right? So the new rates begin on the 1st of April through on a yearly basis. So last year, I'll remind the board that we had two options, both with regular rates and renewables last year, based on the, I would say, modest difference in the price of the two. The board decided that they would prefer to stay with renewables over the standard. And so that's what we have here, that we have a choice of either going with the standard rate with AEP is going to be the provider no matter what, because they're the lowest, whether we want to go with their standard rate or go with renewables rate. Staff is recommending the renewables rate with AEP at 0.07686. It's a marginal cost increase, but based on what we're trying to accomplish here, that's one of our strategic goals of trying to take advantage and reduce our footprint. So.
Did you say that the 0.059, the current, is also with renewables?
Yes. So, like to.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
make the motion to approve the energy supplier to go with AEP for the 0.076 for the renewables.
A second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Then we are on E4. The claims and history report for January is included in the packet for reference. Another bump, pretty up, but it's not unexpected.
February is a short month.
Yeah, it's a short month. Any questions on that? If not, we'll keep moving on. We're on to, let's see, marketing. So advertisement overview memo regarding that included in your packet. Something we talked about the planning session, just getting forward an overview of contracts that we had in February, sorry, in March. And then we have additionally a request for additional services that are also part of this month's request. So let me find it here. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling down. Yep, there we go. From Loves Park. So an event going on at Mercy that will be taking place from March 8th to the 9th. Loves Park's asking for us to provide some additional service on our fixed route services out in that area to supplement what we have, to provide connectivity between the area of the Mercy parking lots and their sports court too. And so we did this last year on the request. And actually, then we take the service hours that we add and add it to their budget that we get reimbursed on. So it's really kind of a quasi extension of the city group services out in that area. And then on Sunday, the Riverside Perryville route that we extend over there. But it's actually, we have to supplement that with some additional bus or so. That's submitted for the board's approval for the special service that's provided for them for that event.
I make the motion to approve the special service request from the Village of City of Loves Park.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then, moving on then to our grants report. So first we have, Paula, why don't you cover this fixed asset and then the next piece?
Yes, this is a FTA requirement that we bring this to the board. This is the FY 24 fixed asset final inventory review. Most of these numbers actually came straight from the audit, so they should be no surprise. At the end of, or the beginning of the year, on 7/1 of 23, there was 66,237,727. With the FY 24 additions and deletions, the ending balance ended up at 72,154,865. You subtract depreciation, it ends up at being 46,685,792. When it came to the actual deletions, that was actually the 5,008,707. For all that sold equipment, we got $30,514. Obviously, we had some vehicles in there, but again, really don't get much return for old vehicles, so. Those proceeds are deposited to our local capital account to be used as local share in purchasing new equipment. Just a FYI, file, I guess. Then I can hop on to fun stuff. We have resolution R 2501. This is for our 5307 amendment. And if you look at the grant, it's the second page is really kind of the most important. It actually tells you how much funds are in amendment number 2. It provided $1,860,000 of funds, and that was divided up between preventive maintenance, ADA, and operating assistance, mostly for security. We're just adding to the funds that are already there. Obviously, all these are end up in our budget for next year. That's about it, unless you guys got questions on this one.
I do, no.
I need a motion.
Yeah, motion.
I'll move that we approve resolution number R 25-1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Which hops us on to R 2502. And actually to point out, the FTA actually came out and said for R 2501, that they were saying that a resolution is for one grant and then all grants going forward. I believe it's more prudent to continue doing the resolution by grant. So that's what we lead us to the R 2502, and that's for our 5339 amendment. And it's amendment number 1. And again, if you go to the second page, it'll actually point out that the total funds that we're applying for, and then which is 710,779, and it's going to use transportation development credits as the local match. So it doesn't really add to the actual total, but it provides the 20% so that we don't have to have an actual local or state match for this. We are going to be buying pure transit vehicle security camera systems. We're hopefully going to be getting all of our vehicles in the spring here. So we're trying to be prepared to buy the camera systems. It's also for our fare boxes, to update our fare boxes to the new type of fare boxes that we've been getting on our newer vehicles. A service truck, Dan could probably do more about that. Want to say anything about a service truck? No? Okay.
It's replacing a 1997 Ford Explorer, if that helps.
There you go.
I see.
And
We got our money's worth out of that one.
there is a little bit, about 300,000 for the electric charging infrastructure project. What that is for is we've already awarded the generator and the install of the generator, and we've awarded the actual install of the electric charging station. What we don't have quite enough money for is the actual electric station itself. We're about almost $300,000 short. So we have actually put that $300,000 in this grant to supplement the congressional directed funds that we had to actually finish this project. So again, as I said, the whole total is $710,779. Any questions on that one?
Did I read that this one includes purchasing of bus shelters, or was it I miss?
What?
I think that was.
Not on this one,
Not
they
on
have
this one.
shelters.
Okay,
Oh, actually, yeah, that would have been in the original grant.
okay. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move that we approve resolution number R-25-02.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I want to say it's very confusing in trans. I print out the grant from that, so it just adds the amendments right into it. So it really doesn't have a segregated, so it's a little hard to tell.
Thanks, Paul. Just a quick one going back, it was mentioned about the security cameras going into vehicles. We do have, what's our expected delivery date of those CVP vehicles and how many CVP vehicles? How
Oh,
many?
see if, 8, is it all 8? And then we're hopefully gonna get 2 of the electric vehicles.
Right, but the CVPs will be coming
Spring.
8 in the spring.
Yeah, they haven't released the actual times because they're doing like
Yeah.
500 some vehicles, I think, the
Right.
state is, so.
Well,
definitely
So
totally
we've been waiting
yeah.
for those as replacements, state of good repair on our paratransit police. Well, the
all
ones,
of them are CVP, some of them are 5310.
some of the
our own
5310s
funds,
too,
yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah. So you get a round coming in for replacements, which is certainly helpful.
Right, but they do come in without security cameras, so we
Yeah.
definitely want to get those,
Yep.
so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then to E7 safety and training, the January safety training report included in your packet for review, the claims history, performance data. Any questions on that information?
I just had a question about the system reliability mean distance and just looking at the targets in our 2025 and if there was any kind of background info on that.
So that number is derived from George's report on the roll calls for the month. So what Drex does, he goes through and what was our average, what would we like to be? We always like to be above 3,000, which really means it'd be 1 roll call for every vehicle, in between our PM schedule, which is 6,000. So, like this month, we were a little bit low, some months we're above, so 3,000 is kind of the industry standard for where we want to be.
Okay.
And it's required to have a goal in the safety report.
Great to see 0 or
Yeah, pretty good
good
month,
month.
considering
good month.
the weather. Right?
Yeah.
All things.
All righty, no other questions there. We'll move on to the other business. So item A, we have the EO summary report for 2024. Susan, do you want to walk us through the reason for this and what your analysis was?
Well, we are required to report this data every year, and these numbers are the percentages are very comparable to where we were at this time last year. We do have a few more total employees than we did, and we just keep always looking to increase the number of females, although they're typically underrepresented in transit, as well as more male and female Hispanics, just to better mirror our population here. But otherwise, we're in pretty good shape. We don't have any specific goals, we just like things to be close to what our own population is.
So this is a yearly requirement of our EO plan, which is a 3-year recurring plan. We're about year 2. So, that'll
Is
be
that a state requirement?
federal requirement, FTA federal requirement. So that's a board adopted plan. This is one report outs from that plan. So, all right. I think that covers everything on the agenda. We are to executive session for that. Next scheduled board meeting is Monday, March 31st at 3:30.
Yep.
We're good with that? Okay. All right.
Go to executive session to discuss collective bargaining matters pursuant to five ALCS 122C2 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
All right, thank you.
Motion that we come out of the executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.